This is the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network.
88.5 FM, the voice of Maui. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network. Welcome to the show. Coming up today, me and Dan O'Brien go on a Komi-palooza. It is a Komi-o-thon, as it was, as we dissect probably the biggest testimony to happen in the biggest case in American conspiratorial theory. And that's not coming from us. That's coming from James Clapper. Hi, I'm your host, critical thinker, problem solver, guy that woke up extremely early to watch the Comey coverage because in Hawaii it started at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
My name's Shaggy Jenkins. You can find me on my website, shaggyjenkins.com, along with my co-host today. He can be found on social media at Hawaiian O'Brien.
Hello.
He's a very tan Irishman. Production director for Akaku Maui Community Media Center, and the reason that my morning was almost ruined. Please welcome Dan O'Brien.
Hey, and by the way, Irish people can't get tan. They're either burnt or white.
Yeah. We call them
there
crispy.
Is no in between, yeah. Yeah, so I'm burnt.
All right, well, before we get into our Komi-o-palooza, I got to say, Dan O'Brien, my morning this morning was nothing but a Dan love fest. I don't mean a damned love fest. I mean a Dan love fest. Let me explain, because, you know, this show is heard in other parts. I mean, we do broadcast from the 50th state, the beautiful Valley Isle of Maui. Oh, aloha.
Yeah.
But you made recently for the Nisei Memorial, or the Nisei Veterans Memorial Foundation, you made this wonderful documentary on, Japanese American history during World War II.
Yeah.
And coming up this Sunday on where we're from, our home station, Akaku Maui Community Media Center, you said that you're going to be doing the fighting one Puka Puka.
Yeah, the one Puka Puka.
If you don't know anything about them, everybody has heard the term "go for broke."
Yeah.
That's actually a Hawaiian term.
Yeah. The 100th Infantry Battalion was like the Go for Broke Battalion. They're famous, world renowned, especially definitely here in the U.S. in World War II history.
Yeah, certified badasses, and the subject of probably one of the greatest speeches on racial acceptance from a president, when Harry S. Truman said, "Not only have you fought our enemies on foreign shores, but you have fought unrighteous racism here in the United States."
Right.
It was, like I said, one of the biggest civil rights speeches before we get up to, I think it was Eisenhower and the Howard University speech.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reason is because, you know, I don't know if a lot of people below a certain age know this, but the 100th was mostly Japanese Americans that volunteered to fight as their relatives, friends, and family members were being interred
in American concentration camps.
Yes.
Don't call them internment camps. They were concentration camps for Japanese Americans on United States soil.
Yeah. So they volunteered at that time. So that tells you a little bit about their bravery and their character.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be filming this is an ongoing speaker series with the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center here. The one about just an intro to the Nisei veterans. The center was really lucky in that 2 actual Japanese American World War II Nisei veterans came to speak. And the daughter of a third came to speak. It was fascinating, the stories that they told, because it wasn't, kind of the movie tone newsreel
the
type
Hogan
of stories.
We go now to the Pacific Front, where our men are fighting hard in Guadalcanal.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like that.
Okay.
And it was just a really. It was a big honor for me that was my intro to this. I didn't really know much about it, and now I'm going back for a second show. It's going to be great.
Oh, man, I know, but they literally trapped me in a room and bragged about how great Dan O'Brien was for over an hour, Dan. Over an hour.
I'm making him say this right now. He's got notes.
Yeah.
He's got notes. He's reading off a teleprompter.
No, I'm like James Comey. After a while, I got suspicious of why they were talking about you so much, so I started taking notes. Like, yes, tell me more about Dan and his involvement with this project.
Yeah, great. I got a dossier now. Great.
Yeah, but a lot of kudos to you for engaging in, because I've always said it on this show, I am a lover of the complete picture of history, and your project that you are doing with the Nisei Memorial Veterans Center is bringing up a lot of history that America has not been too, and I hate to use this word, proud about in the past, although essential to the picture that we are today, very essential to the culture that we enjoy here on the islands, these stories and your involvement in them. So, Dan, kudos, slow golf clap to you, my friend.
Thank you. And kudos to the Nisei Veterans Memorial Center and Deidre Teagarden, who kind of is heading this up. She's doing a really good job, and all the people over there, they rely on volunteers like the rest of us.
Oh yeah, I didn't tell you.
Place, yeah.
Because they found out that I work with you, not because they found out that I am like a history minor in college. For God's sakes, I've written theses on this stuff, but they said, "Oh, well, since you work with Dan, you must be pretty good at this stuff too. How would you like to volunteer to be one of our researchers?"
Yeah, they're really good at they're good at the volunteer recruitment. I will give them that.
Yeah, so officially for the rest of this day, it's the Dan O'Brien Show. Okay, I'm just taking my name off the credits. I've been second fiddle all morning for this.
Well, if anyone could see in the studio, you're obviously better at the research part than I am, because I only have one little packet. And for this Comey thing, you've got like 6 packets laid out on the table.
Okay, so here's the deal. Last night on Twitter, remember, we're both on Twitter. I'm at Shaggy Live. You are at Hawaiian O'Brien, spelled the Irish way. You tweeted up this picture of, we're getting ready to dissect this, insert FCC unapproved word here, ding.
It was Twitter. You're allowed to do that.
Yeah, it was Twitter, 140 characters of vulgarity. But you had tweeted up your notes, and you know me. I'm sitting at home last night, drinking a bottle of wine, trying to get over my life as we know it. And I see this tweet pop up on my phone, and I'm like, oh, hell no. I will not be outclassed on my own show. So around 3:30 this morning, I had set my computer to go up, and you're going to love this, because I took the German news network feed of our trial, which you know what that means? No commentary. Open mics during every little awkward silence you could. Nobody trying to pontificate.
Wow.
So I got unfiltered James Comey this morning.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I want to tell you that this is something that we miss in American media. And this is going to be our first question of the day for you, Dan O'Brien, media analysis, god of production, and overlord to editors everywhere. Dan, I want to ask this simple question. When it comes to the United States media coverage of things, in our rush to put our own 2 cents into stories, do we sometimes miss the nuance of the room sound and the importance to the story?
Yeah. I think, behind all the modern day branding of the cable news channels and the chatter, and all the noise that goes along with an event like this. I mean, they're now at the stage, the news media is, where they're promoting it ahead of time as an event. It's almost like a television event.
Oh my God, the countdowns?
Yeah, they're promoting it, and they're actually making 30-second promos out of a public hearing. I mean, so they're hyping it up. So the danger to me is that when you hype something up like this, and natural events take their course, and it's not as bombshelly as they wanted it to be, then it's a letdown and people tune out.
You know, I know this because you are the production overlord here at Akaku Maui Community Media Center. You guys do the government channel here. Have we ever thought about employing those same effects here? Like, could you imagine just one? We now return you to countdown to the mayor's address. We're 10 hours away from the mayor's address, and before we get there, we cut quickly to boards and commissions. It's boards and commissions, Maui government coverage. I mean, that is what they do.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if you really want to be honest, politics has become Hollywood Part 2 in modern news media.
Yeah, but Washington, D.C. is Hollywood for nerds.
It really is. Hollywood for ugly people.
Like me, yes. Because this is they hype the drama and the politics of governance. You know, I was thinking about politics the other day. It's not a dirty word, you know. It's gotten a really bad rap by the people who claim to be politicians. Mm-hmm. But true politics is the art of coming up with compromise in a group of people with all differing opinions. That's politics.
Yeah, but you know what modern media it is, oh, wait a minute, Dan, we cut quick for this live breaking news. Dun, 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 dun. From the Maui boards and commissions, we get back now to live water testimony.
Yeah. My name is Kimo, and I live in upcountry Kula. I'd like to talk about my water usage rights.
Oh, Dan, we'll get back to that breaking story in just a second. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In America, we seem to take away from stories and trying to cram in more excitement.
Well, let me tell you something. As a viewer of the government channel that Akaku runs, unfiltered, uncut, unedited meetings from gavel to gavel, there is nuance in the silences, and there is nuance in the feel of the room, and it does tell a lot about what is going on internally and, you know, between members and whatnot. You can get a lot out of those awkward silences and the hushes in the room and the whispers and all that kind of stuff.
And that's why I absolutely loved watching foreign coverage of James Comey's testimony, because the tension amongst some parties in the room, the apprehension, and just the weight of it. I'm sorry, but in the moments where nobody was speaking and it was just kind of unfiltered room noise, the tension, the gravitas, the importance was palpable.
Yeah.
It was heavy, Dan.
Yeah, I bet.
And that's something that we don't get from American media coverage, of just being able to observe events as they unravel.
Yeah, naturally, yeah.
Right. So what I wanted to do is, because I am starting to, and Dan, I'm going to get your opinion on this, because I'm finding out that I'm representative of a lot of people in this country, enlightened thinkers. I'd like to think that we are. We don't subscribe to nor want the American media to be our source of news.
No. I think for me personally, and here's what I would recommend to anyone who's critical of American news media: find other sources, but don't leave American news media out of it, but consider it as one of many sources that you draw from, like the German news feed, or, you know, I mean, I'm not going to say Russia Today or Russia whatever.
But
the
you got
RT
Sky
is.
News, you've got BBC.
Yeah, you've got other legitimate overseas, you know, news outlets that are unquestionably, you know, unbiased.
Yeah, I love the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Company. So, you know, there you go.
Yeah.
But
that's a good one too.
Yeah. So what I want to do for our purposes today, and just to show you who's got the bigger note, I went and only got the transcripts of what happened. No commentation, no opinionation, no pithiness.
Yeah.
I wanted word for word only what was said from the mouths of the senators and James Comey himself.
That's true. And anyone who wants to criticize this entire situation or question it should do the same exact thing.
Right. Stop getting your opinion from the news. Get the transcripts and read them back to back.
It took me 20 minutes to read his 9-page opening statement. I mean, I dissected it.
I know.
But that's the commitment level, people. 20 minutes. Just take 20 minutes and read what the guy had to say word for word without any commentary or opinion about it.
Yeah.
And draw your own conclusion.
Well,
that's what you should do.
And I'm going to read from some of the transcripts of the testimony today, and we'll stop from time to time to analyze them because first, I want to kick off with what happened 24 hours ago, and that is when the Judiciary Panel and James Comey himself AOK'd this. They released the written statement of what the testimony was supposed to entail.
Yeah.
Now, Dan went cover to cover on this, and a couple of big things sprung up. One of the biggest dates, and I'm going to get into some of the comments from Senator Burr on this, but one of the big things that kicked off this whole kind of cloud of suspicion between Comey and Trump was a fateful meeting on January 6th. Now, according to the testimony, Dan, what happened during that meeting?
During that meeting, Comey, it was a briefing before he was even inaugurated, and Comey had a long discussion beforehand with some FBI counterparts to see if they should broach the subject of this investigation that they were supposedly having into Trump specifically, not campaign Russian meddling.
No, Trump the individual.
A counterintelligence investigation. Because there were rumors and leaks that this was going on. So they decided, well, if he brings it up, if the moment is right, if you feel an opening, yeah, go ahead and broach the subject. So that's what he did. He stayed behind after, I think it was an intelligence brief.
Yeah, and that was, this wasn't the one that came later with Sessions and Kushner. This was Kushner and a couple other people, I think?
and more intelligence,
more intelligence people.
Leaders, more like, NSA kind of stuff or whatever the acronyms are with all those people. But yeah, it wasn't the same meeting in the Oval Office. That came later.
Yeah.
This meeting, it was a brief meeting, and then everyone left, and he just kind of stayed behind and said, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know, Mr. President, I know there are rumors about, some salacious things that may or may not have happened with you, and there's a rumor of counterintelligence and all that." And he just told the president, "No, we're not doing a counterintelligence investigation on you."
Okay, now this also kind of corresponds. Now, I'm not sure, and maybe you can clear this up for me because, Dan, I woke up at 3 a.m. this morning. I am so tired right now.
Yeah.
But clear this up for me.
Mm-hmm.
The president at one point was really, and we're talking about before suspicion, before things like that, it really kind of put on this air of trying to be kind of chummy with Comey, wasn't he?
Yeah. He I think it was his way of giving Comey an opening to pledge loyalty, because that's, from what Comey has written, that's a very important thing for Trump, is people pledging and acting loyal to him, not to the country, but to him specifically. And Comey noted this several times in his 9 encounters with the president, that it's always about him. He's always concerned about himself.
Yeah.
And it's not a conclusion Comey draws, it's just what Trump says. I'm worried about me.
Yeah, the thing that really gets you, though, is at first we have this picture of Comey, and Senator Feinstein kind of brought this up, and I'll get to those statements in a little bit. But Comey, even though he is a very handsome, tall, very strong-looking man, when it came to public appearances with him alongside the president, he did try to fall as far into the background as possible.
Yeah.
And I think it was either January 6th or January 27th. This led the president to deliberately putting himself beside Comey and kind of leaning over and saying, I look forward to working with you.
Yeah. And according to Comey's own notes, he was surprised at this, I think it was maybe the one after January 27th dinner. He was surprised when the president asked if he wants to stay on. because he had already been asked that on 2 other occasions.
Yeah.
And Comey said, yes, sir, I have every intention of staying on until my 10-year term.
Right. And his term would have actually ended in 2023.
Yeah.
And Comey himself, in his testimony today,
Yeah.
said, while that's important. Now, Dan, as far as the written statements of James Comey, I want you to give, because this was yesterday. We had 24 hours to digest this before we got to today. Dan, what is some of the biggest things that you learned from the written statement?
I think the biggest thing is, and I really want to read between the lines, but I'm trying to be responsible here, so I'm not going to dissect it too much. But the biggest thing I learned is that there's a reason Comey didn't resign. He was doing this. He was gathering evidence. And he wanted to see if he didn't stop the Russia investigation, if he would get fired, because that proves that he got fired solely because he didn't do something the president had inappropriately asked him to do.
Okay, so you're telling me that this crazy guy basically used his job as a gamble to prove obstruction of justice.
Yeah, or, even he said it wasn't obstruction of justice, so I'm not sure. I think he was just trying to...
Yeah, there was a couple of times he, even in the testimony today, not in the written statement, but in the testimony today, he did try to reaffirm, I am not saying obstruction.
Yeah.
But I am saying suspicion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 6 occasions he kept trying to, he would or 9 occasions, I think, he would communicate directly with the president, and it was inappropriate. And he even laid out the biggest thing I learned that was not in the news was Jeff Sessions' role in this.
God.
And I didn't like him before, but now I'm just kind of I'm disappointed in the dude because he has no integrity.
None
because
whatsoever.
Here's what happened. It's inappropriate for the president to directly communicate one-on-one with the FBI director under most circumstances. Obama did it twice, once to say goodbye to Comey when he was leaving, and once before that to talk about some kind of protocol or something.
Yeah.
And it was very brief. It was kind of passing in the hallway type of thing.
It was like, oh, hey, James, how you doing?
So that was the extent of that. 9 times in 4 months, Trump directly contacted Comey and was just asking inappropriate or weird things. And the inappropriate ones was about Flynn, and the weird stuff was about how he can save his reputation. We need to get the word out that I'm not being investigated personally by you guys. We need to spread that out. And James Comey was trying to tell him, we've already released that information to the press. Like, what else do you want us to do? Go on a promotional tour?
Right. It's the Donald Trump's not guilty tour.
Yeah, I mean, it was just weird stuff like that. And he finally directed it. But the Jeff Sessions thing, he, after the inappropriate meeting one-on-one in the Oval Office, the whatever that was, do you know?
That was the 27th.
Yes. He emailed Sessions and said, I request that you do not let that happen again. It's inappropriate. It's unprecedented.
Yeah.
And it's not the way it should happen. You are my supervisor. He needs to go through you.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And Jeff Sessions never replied to that.
Never replied.
Never
and then on the
spoke of it.
14th, he left the room with Jared Kushner, and that led up to, okay, well, look, let's get into, because I want to read these comments and get your reaction before we go to the break real quick. But Dan O'Brien, media analyst and guy that is probably having a field day like I am over all this stuff. I'm sorry, but I love history. I never thought that I would live through multiple historic moments.
And like him or hate Trump, this is a historical time. I mean, I think everything is being tested right now by a guy who isn't concerned or doesn't know the boundaries.
Yeah, well, I mean, James Clapper said we're already bigger than the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave this a new name. It's called Russialude, for Russian collusion. Russialude. Russialude. See? It's a great name.
It just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah. It sounds like something Bill Cosby would use to dope women.
I know. I was gonna say it does sound like a pill.
Yeah.
It's like the newest, pharmaceutical advertisement. Russialude. Consult your doctor.
Yeah. Side effects may include corruption of the democratic system as we know it. Okay, so this is from the opening statements from Senator Burr, okay? And I'm quoting here directly from the transcripts. Quote, there are several outstanding issues, and this is him talking to Comey, not addressed in your statement that I hope you'll clear up for the American people today. Did the president's request for loyalty, your impression, let the one-on-one dinner of January 27th was, and I quote, at least in part, an effort to create some patronage relationship? And March 30th phone call asking you if you could do to lift the cloud of Russian investigation in any way, alter your approach of the FBI's investigation into General Flynn or the broader investigation into Russia and possible links to the campaign. In your opinion, did potential Russian efforts to establish a link with individuals in the Trump orbit rise to the level we could define as collusion, or was it a counterintelligence concern? Now, these are all his questions right off the bat. Dan, what do you think, at least as far as opening statements of the Comey testimony, what do you think this panel is really intent on doing? Clarifying the written statements or expounding on things they have yet not explored?
Yeah, I think they're expanding on things they haven't explored for sure. I don't think this is just kind of double checking the written statement. I think it's trying to dig a little further. And, you know, remember, this is a public square, public testimony. So there may be things that everyone has agreed is off limits.
Oh, yeah.
And will come up in private session. So, you know, in closed door session. Closed to the public. So stuff like that. Like, I thought it was...
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about Jeff Sessions as a door. He would squeak like a little... Squeak! Don't forget to shut me, y'all.
That statement you just read, it reminded me of another thing that struck me, and it's something that proves both of us right, so I thought I'd bring it up.
Oh, please, by all means, make us look good.
Remember when these notes Comey was taking was being leaked by his friends, which he acknowledges in this statement?
Yeah.
We talked about why would that happen? Why didn't he quit? Why didn't he resign? All that. And notice he said the Russia investigation continued uninterrupted. Let me see if I can...
Yeah, uninterrupted.
Yeah, exactly. Uninterrupted. All the agents working on it had no knowledge of any of this. That proves that's what he really wanted. He wanted them to continue it without any disruption, and that's what they did.
Okay. Well, coming back, we're going to get into more of the transcripts. It's real journalism today. And, of course, it's really exhausting.
My brain hurts.
Yeah, okay, so load up on the caffeine and join us as we pile through more of Comey's story of what happened with Trump, Russia, the investigation, and, God, the downfall of society as we know it. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show.
Heads up, home mechanics. The suspension of the county's used motor oil program.
Okay, Dan.
Man. Wow. Excuse me, I'm starving.
I know, I didn't eat yet either.
You want some of that?
No, I'm gonna go probably get Taco Bell.
You have to talk.
I know.
This is making it hard for me to talk.
Yeah, I know. But this is what's so bad is I just realized that we could probably do all of next week's shows on all of this.
This is like an extended podcast at Hang Loose Lounge, you know?
I know. God. Well, you know, Monday, we're off here in the state of Hawaii, right? Because
Kamehameha.
Kamehameha Day. Well, the national network isn't. So I was thinking about coming in tomorrow and recording a show for Monday. So if you're not busy in the morning, maybe we should come back and do a part 2 for Monday.
We might have to.
God, yeah. I swear I tried to get through as much of that as I could.
Well, everyone said they were kind of disappointed, and I'm like, it validates a lot of stuff that people were saying was not true. And I mean, it's like, I don't know. I found a lot of interesting things personally.
Oh, God.
It was I find it really interesting, and we'll maybe talk about this if, just about how much time do we have?
Oh, we have like 15 seconds.
Well, I'll save it for the air.
Okay, all right.
For more information on adoption, visit adoptuskids.org. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
More news, less alternative facts. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network.
88.5 FM, the voice of Maui. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show on the Pacifica Radio Network. Welcome back to it. I am, of course, your host, lovable, cuddly, and completely bald. My name is Shaggy Jenkins. Yeah, go figure that one. You can find me on my website, shaggyjenkins.com, or wherever fine social media is served at Shaggy Live. Joining me for the week of news and review, which we just had to scrap all that because of today's testimony. It is media analyzer, production overlord, handsome man and friend to animals big and small. His name, Dan O'Brien.
Hi, my favorite animals are geckos.
They are, really? Is that your Amakua?
Yeah, that is my Amakua. It's like the Yoda of Hawaii. You know, they're so small and unassuming, but they have such power.
Are you talking about me?
No, I'm talking about the geckos.
Small and unassuming. That's what my wife actually nicknamed me.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, like you're a gecko.
Oh, okay.
You have a green tint to your skin.
That's probably the alcoholism. But let's get back into the reasons that I drink. Modern news.
Yeah.
Here's one thing, because as we were discussing during the break, me and you, this has been an exhausting news cycle, and this story in particular is so large that earlier this week, and I want to get you, Dan O'Brien, as a American citizen, not just as a show host and a media supervisor and a dissector, just you as an average citizen, I want to get your opinions on what James Clapper said this week. The Trump-Russia allegations and conspiracy and ensuing investigation has eclipsed in size and magnitude Watergate.
Yeah, and that, number one, should be a wake-up call to any Trump supporters who think this is just a political thing. This is huge. This makes Benghazi look like a mosquito bite.
Yeah, it does.
You know, and I'm still trying to figure out Benghazi. I still don't know what the whole thing is. We'll explore it one time.
Oh, it was easy.
I don't know what the bad stuff was. What was the charge against? Well, we'll get into that later.
Okay. I was like, it was pretty straightforward. Intelligence before didn't get distributed back, and then they wanted action. Well, they basically wanted permission to do some action. We didn't get back to them in time. People died.
Okay.
There you go. All right, but let's get back into it is bad.
Yeah.
But on scale, as far as ramifications going forward, and this is the thing that people don't consider about this whole Russian-Trump investigation, we're talking about, for the first time in modern history, a constitutional threat.
Yeah. For some reason, we decided to elect a guy that is testing every single institution that we've kind of taken for granted in the last 50 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So nothing like this has happened before, and there hasn't been a president like this before. It's unprecedented in every way.
Yeah.
The media hasn't reacted like this to anybody before. You know, the courts, I mean, it's like, it's on and on, but, you know, I was listening to Colin Powell's, I think it was his press secretary or something like that, or somebody close to him, you know, back in the day. And he said, this is really big. This is huge. And it goes beyond just a scandal. It goes to the heart of who we want to be as a country. Like, do we really want a guy like this to represent America? And I'm not saying the answer is no, because obviously,
thanks a lot, America.
He's in the White House.
You did that for us.
Yeah, but I think his point is just like, you know, it's big because it really is big. It's not just a petty little political thing. This is huge. Republicans are getting worried, not just politically, but that Trump unwittingly, I think, and maybe we could talk about that, unwittingly let operatives of Russia or paid lobbyists of Russia into his campaign, and they affected his policy and his decision making.
Well, this is something too that Republicans are going to have to wrestle with, whether or not the investigation becomes true. And Dan, I want to get your assessment on this, because in light of these allegations. We do kind of see how not just Trump, the candidate, Trump, the president, but Trump, the bannerhead of the party, has been damaging to Republicans. Dan, has this whole scandal, well, let's just say scandal aside, has Trump himself, better way of asking, has Trump himself corrupted the very soul of Republicans?
Seeing as how they've
Don't say they're soulless. Don't
No,
say they're soulless. That's a cop-out
I'm
answer.
not. No, they've swept into office. I mean, I kind of don't buy into this whole idea that Republicans are on the ropes. They're in control of everything.
Well, I'm not saying on the ropes. The party itself is doing good,
Yeah.
as far as where they're placed. However, as a platform behind the scenes, there is a lot more infighting this go round.
Yes, and I think long term it has changed the Republican Party. I don't know if it made it better or worse because I don't know, but in the future will tell where the Republicans go with this. But if they become this kind of party of that represents a small minority of people, they will naturally start to kind of lose voters nationally. But it's going to take longer than people think because of all the great work the Republicans did gerrymandering all the districts.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to have a Republican-controlled House or close to it for a really long time.
For a while, I'm afraid. Okay, so I want to get back into the testimony because we haven't even dived into the actual questions and answers, and some of these were pretty rapid fire. Now, I talked about Burr's opening statements, and Burr basically said that, look, right now we're trying to establish that what you said in your written testimony needs clarification and maybe some expounding. So as they're going in through the opening statements, this is how Burr starts off, and I'm quoting here. Burr, quote, "Do you have any doubt that Russia attempted to interfere in the 2016 election?" Comey, none. None.
Yeah.
One word answer, and it's not a good answer.
Right.
No doubts whatsoever that Russia did something in the 2016. He has none. Okay?
Yeah.
Next question. Do you have any doubt that the Russian government was behind the intrusion into the DCCC? Now, DCCC, if you don't know, is the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and they are the guys that do all of the lobbying and the sweatshop calls and stuff for money. You
The sweatshop calls.
You've heard about that, right? The DCCC?
They employed sweatshop.
No, if you have got elected, part of your party member dues is to go into this tiny room, and they give you a call list of donors and stuff to call up, and you have to stay in there 10, maybe 12 hours. They serve terrible food. Everybody has bad gas and BO. And it is like a sweatshop that the DCCC puts you into when it comes to campaign financing.
Wow.
Yeah, if you didn't know about that, now you do.
Now I do.
Yeah, it's like, God, how would I say? It's Guantanamo Bay for politicians.
Those poor people, man.
Yeah, but, okay, so Burr asked, it said, did ask James Comey, quote, "Do you have any doubt that the Russian government was behind the intrusions into the DCCC systems and the subsequent leaks of that information?" Comey's response, once again, quote, "No, no doubt." Dan, what are we learning so far?
That he knows a lot about this investigation that he's probably not saying.
Well, he
publicly.
He does say later that there are certain questions that he does not feel comfortable answering in a, quote, open environment.
Yeah.
As to, because they are linked to ongoing investigations still in development.
Well, and that's what this is. This can damage the country kind of stuff. This isn't, it'll hurt Trump. This is going to really damage the institution of the presidency, which goes beyond just one person. It's an office. It's an institution of our government. And it's going to damage, America. So that's why you don't hear people confessing stuff in open court. It goes beyond that. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. It's so bad, they can't tell the public, which is kind of scary to the public.
Yeah. So I want to skip ahead a little bit because I had Burr asking him, are you confident? And this is kind of an important thing to clear up because a lot of right-wing news has tried to say that there was a lot of manipulation in the voting process in the 2016 for Hillary and the Democrats.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, Republicans won, so that's kind of a weird claim. But Burr had asked, he said, look, are you confident that no votes cast in the 2016 presidential election were altered? And Comey's response was, I'm confident. When I left as director, I had seen no indication of that whatsoever. However, right-wing media is still harping on these illegal votes that most definitely happened.
Yeah.
Now, does this testimony damage their little conspiracy theory?
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of the stuff coming out of the right-wing media is, I don't even know how to say this. Like, have you ever met people who who make stuff up as an argument tool? So they'll make something up to argue, so the argument goes somewhere else.
Yeah, Dan, I'm in media.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I just realized that. I think it's not like a political trait. I think it's just a
people trait,
personal trait where some people think a tool of argument is to use the ridiculous as a possibility, you know, and just throw it out there. Other people like Comey probably rely a lot more on evidence and facts and the things they've learned and their experience.
Yeah, I came up with a good nickname for him. You know what he is? He's the Joe Friday of the intelligence community. Just the facts, ma'am.
Yeah, just
the facts.
He is. I mean, it's like I remember asking on an old show I did during the election process, the race, if when Comey went out and released the Hillary update, said we're reopening the investigation into Hillary, we found some additional emails that we need to go through. I asked my cohorts if that was a political thing because I didn't really know much about Comey.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of agreed. I think even I said, yeah, it seems political. It seems kind of politically motivated. Now, I was wrong about that. You can plainly see he doesn't play favors with people. He just tells it like it is. And I think that to anybody who does not believe him, you have to at least acknowledge that he's much more credible than Donald Trump, who is caught lying constantly about things.
Yeah, now Burr had asked him about the 2016 email leaks, and he had basically said that, quote, honestly, you know, it caused a whole lot of personal pain for me, but as I look back, given what I knew at the time and even what I've learned since, I think it was the best way to protect the justice institution, including the FBI. He did it because he did not want the intelligence community to be overshadowed by, oh, they must have known something about Hillary and didn't investigate and didn't tell us.
Exactly, and he was anticipating that certain FBI agents were going to leak the fact that they were looking into additional emails, which would have made not only him look worse, but it would have delegitimized the FBI in the eyes of like half the population.
Yeah.
So he was kind of caught in a hard spot. He knew the information had a potential to get out there and leaked to the press. And then if he did not acknowledge that beforehand, then it would have made people think that it was a politically motivated silence. So he kind of had to say something, but he was dancing a very difficult dance.
Yeah, because this is the thing. When we skip over to the vice chair of this whole Judiciary Committee is Warner. Warner had asked Comey, quote, did you feel that you needed to create this written record of these memos because they might need to be relied on at some future date? The response was from Comey, quote, sure. I created records after conversations that I think I did it after each one of our 9 conversations. If I didn't, I did it for nearly all of them, especially the ones that were substantive. I knew there might come a day when I would need a record of what had happened, not just to defend myself, but to defend the FBI and our integrity and so on and so on. So what we're seeing here, Dan, is James Comey was called a showboat by Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Do you see showboat, or do you see I am a guy that wants the institution preserved?
Yeah, I see straight down the line FBI guy. You know, I mean, I think but besides him being like 8 feet tall, I think he's the guy I picture when I close my eyes and think of, expert FBI agent, you know? The thing that this shows me, I'll give you one of my read between the lines, nuanced thing. But I think this plainly shows that Trump is way out of his league as far as dealing with Comey. I mean, Comey's running circles around him just in terms of intelligence at this point.
Right.
He's not a guy that you can mess around with. I mean, I recall that story that he included in his notes where after Trump asked for his loyalty, he literally sat there and didn't say anything. And it was an awkward silence for several seconds. And finally, Trump, changed the subject to something else. But for him to have the president of the United States directly asking for his loyalty and him just sit there and not say anything, man, that takes a lot of just moxie.
Right? Because look, Senator Dianne Feinstein, right? She asked, quote, "Talk for a moment about his request that you pledge loyalty and your response to that and what impact you believe it had." Now he goes, "I don't know for sure because I don't know the president well enough to read him well.
Yeah.
I think it was, first of all, relationship didn't get off on a great start given the conversation I had on January 6th. This didn't improve the relationship because it was very, very awkward. He was asking for something and I was refusing to give it." Now she asked, quote, "Did you believe the Russian investigation played a role?" Comey said, "In why I was fired?" Feinstein, "Yes." Comey said, "Yes, I've seen the president say so."
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, he said so in an interview.
Right?
As his campaign or as his White House spokesperson was denying that he fired him because of Flynn.
I know. And then Feinstein goes on and says, no, and Dan, I want to get your response before I read Comey's response. Because you were just talking about this a second ago. Senator Dianne Feinstein said, quote, "Now here's the question. You're big, you're strong. I know the Oval Office, and I know what happens to people when they walk in. There is a certain amount of intimidation. But why didn't you stop and say, Mr. President, this is wrong. I cannot discuss this with you." What do you think? Before I read his response, what do you think his response would be to that? I mean, this is a senator telling you, hey, you look like a tough guy.
Yeah.
Like you can really handle yourself no matter where you go. So if I see you walking into the Oval Office, hey, maybe I'm going to be a little bit more willing to listen to you if you call me out on my actions.
Yeah.
Do you think that she was trying to say, hey, man, why didn't you buck up right there?
I think she was trying to kind of blunt criticism that had come from the right that he didn't speak up right away.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what he said to her, but I think what I would think he would say is that it has to do. He was trying to protect the Russian investigation. He was he was making a note of it since it was. Basically, he was alone,
Yeah.
so it was his word against the president's.
Right.
So if he did resign or whatever, gee, what would happen? It would be word against word.
This was one of the greatest responses in this whole thing. As a matter of fact, this one quote that came from his response made headlines all around the world. As a matter of fact, when I went to the BBC site, this exact quote, well, one of the quotes out of here was the headline. Okay.
I can't wait to hear it. Let's
Okay,
go.
so Comey says, and I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because he goes, "It's a great question. Maybe if I were stronger, I would have." So he basically says, look, it's not about physical strength. It's about mental strength. And maybe that day I wasn't. He had been stunned and whatnot. But he goes on and he says, quote, "I was playing in my mind, what should my response be? That's why I carefully chose the words. Look, I've seen the tweet about tapes. Lordy, I hope there's tapes."
I think that's the speech of a guy who's very confident in his retelling of the events and would probably be verified if there were tapes.
Oh, yeah. And see, remember, Trump had said, I'm going to find these tapes of me and Comey just to ruin Comey. And Comey, in his testimony, is like, oh, Lord, bring the tape.
Please let there be tapes.
Please let there be tapes. I mean, and this is something that I had brought up with because this morning before the Comey testimony started, I got on a little bit of a conference call, a couple of radio stations and stuff. We were all kind of trying to coordinate and talk about how we were going to do the day. And one of the guys brought up kind of an interesting point during the trial, okay? He goes, Trump has called this guy a showboat. And before the show, he had said this. He goes, today do you think we're going to see a showboat, a statesman, or a gumshoe? And I had made the call and said, hey, we're going to see an FBI guy.
Yeah.
This is a guy that hangs out with Bob Mueller. Mueller. Not only does he hang out with him, he's good friends with, a lot of people in the intelligence community, including, if I'm not mistaken, Clapper and Brennan.
And I just found out he was in law school with Amy Klobuchar, who was also a senator from wherever Franken's from. Minnesota. Yeah.
Minnesota.
I think that's her name, Klobuchar.
Klobuchar.
Yeah.
Okay.
She said she went to law school with Comey and remembers how kind of very quick and
yes,
he's just a really good lawyer.
Well, see, and that's what I want to ask you, because Dan today, and you got at least to catch some of the footage, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you see James Comey as, and this is what Trump alleges him to be, as a showboat?
No, I don't think that at all. I really tried to picture. I tried to picture him as somebody who's constantly seeing the spotlight, as some people charge he is, and I just don't see it. It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. He's in a position where it's a very public position, and he's caught in a situation where it's a very public president. And once you get near Trump, man, stuff like this happens. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty confident that he would rather just be at his desk doing his job instead of in the middle of a spotlight. I just have that hunch about him. I don't think he's afraid of it.
No.
If it comes to it. Obviously, he wasn't afraid with Clinton, and he's not afraid with Trump.
No.
But he'd rather just be doing his job behind his desk.
Now, this is the thing, too. It's because, and this was the greatest quote that I'd got from another radio owner. He had said that this is not a showboat. This is a guy firmly in his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Now,
this is his world, man.
I mean, honestly, we have, and it's not just from people like Mueller, and President Obama and other people, including even back when he was just a deputy under President George W. Bush. Mm-hmm. Comey has always been referred to as a guy that is very comfortable, is very centered in his intelligence role.
Yeah, and he knows. He just knows. He's got integrity, and I don't. And that word gets thrown around a lot, but it means that when you say something and people come back and try to use that against you, you stand by it and take responsibility for it. You don't try to pass the buck. I picture a very a guy with integrity when I see Comey. I didn't like what he did, before the election to Hillary. I thought it did affect the outcome.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think
knowing now what he was doing and why he was doing it,
was
it's
a
like
tough position. So it was an impossible. There was no right answer in that, and I think he just chose the one he had to think was right. So I agree. I just, when you look at him, I don't know. You look at him next to Trump at the very least.
That's something that I want to bring up.
Trump just doesn't hold water. I mean, the guy is as transparent as
well,
wax paper.
Yeah, the critique today on the right side of the media is look at how schwarmy he was. He was so laid back and so comfortable, and he was just shooting from the hip. This is a guy that clearly was there as the ringmaster of this whole Democratic three-ring circus of investigation. Yeah. And people have said and alleged, and I'm going to ask you, is this even possible? Dan, is James Comey too calm and too sure to not be correct?
No, exactly. I mean, I don't think you could use his confidence in what he's saying as a weapon against him. It's like he is so sure about what he's saying, and I'm like, oh, geez, that's not a good thing. That's a bad thing. It's like, come on.
Yeah, I mean,
You know?
at this point,
If
I'm
that-
waiting for the Republicans to say, by the way, truthfulness is the new line.
I know. If that's the worst you can call somebody is way too confident in their words and what they're saying, then that's not a very strong charge against them. You know?
No, God. And you know, the bad thing is Dan, we haven't even got through Marco Rubio, who had good some
Yeah.
King stuff, oh my God.
I know.
Yeah.
It's too much. Too much.
Okay.
But
you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to see, and then I'm going to announce this on the air, so if it doesn't happen, then it's my own damn fault. But I am going to find a way to steal some helpers and get you back and do a part 2 to this show if we can, because there's a lot more going on. And I want to leave us with, God, we've only got like 1 minute to answer this. So, Dan, here's my final question. Marco Rubio had asked, quote, as you perceive it, while he had hoped you to do away with it, he's talking about the investigation into Flynn, and Trump's suggestion of hopefully letting it go, quote, you perceived it as an order given the setting, the position, and some of the circumstances. James Comey said yes.
That's a big one.
Yes. So, Dan, when it comes to obstruction of justice, if you're asking the FBI director to let it go and that's an order, is that enough for obstruction?
I'd say legally it sure is.
Yeah.
And I bet you I could find at least one lawyer to back me up.
God, I know, right? There's like billions lining up right now.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong case for obstruction.
Yeah, well, Dan, thank you for going through at least what is the beginnings on the unraveling of the Trump-Russo allegation.
Thanks for giving me the chance. I love it.
Oh, yeah, but next time you tweet out a picture like that at 11 o'clock at night, I'm going to kill you.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was funny, though. All right, for everybody else, check out the website, shaggyjenkins.com, and until next week, be safe.